Ask a CFI, including topic of the month, aftermarket safety equipment. I checked the audio. The audio is good. We don't need any exits and restrooms. So just a tiny bit about me so you know who's talking to you. I got a few hours as a flight instructor in total time, and I'm a retired engineer, and who knows what other professions I've been involved with. I've owned, I'm on my 10th airplane, roughly in this order from top to bottom, and my third T-18. And if you want to know what a T-18 is, there's my girl, Miss Thorpe, and based at Starks Twin Oaks Airpark, 7S3, Hillsboro, Oregon. And that's my dream machine. She just got an oil change yesterday, so she's very happy. Quick shout out to Flights Above, because they let me promote my webinars on their Facebook pages. So just check it out. It's a great organization, and in particular, their localized websites are well monitored and administered, and there's usually some really cool discussions, as well as just cool pictures and people sharing flights and stuff. So give that a look. All right, so this is the FAA's slideshow. So I'm going to pretty much go with what they got, and they're going to talk about, we are going to talk about restraint systems, quick egress in the event you gotta get the heck out of Dodge quickly, and then some other things. Angle of attack is going to show up later also. Isn't this exciting? If you saw a sign that said save 60%, would you want to know more? In Alaska, we could reduce general aviation fatalities through adoption of these technologies, including 4 or 5 point seatbelts, or airbag and seatbelts and helmets, in fact. So yeah, Alaska accidents tend to take place off airport, and many are in low-speed aircraft, so the impact forces aren't that crazy. But it's something to think about, at least if you're going to be replacing seatbelts, if you have an airplane and have a chance to do that, to add shoulder harnesses if you don't have them. Consider having dual shoulder harnesses if you just have the one across the chest. The better seatbelt you got, the better you'll be able to survive a hard landing or an off-airport landing that would be survivable, other than the fact that in case the seatbelts and shoulder harness don't save you. So helmets are a tough sell, but you know, I'm not entirely sure that they're the right solution in all cases. But I don't wear one, to put it that way. But helicopters, of course, they're more common, and bush pilots use them fairly regularly. So multi-point restraint systems. So many of us still fly with single seatbelt restraint systems, but adding shoulder belts and anti-submarine constraint, that's the one that kind of goes down from the buckle in front of your crotch to an anchor point in front of the seat, give you the best chance. Because if you end up inverted and you're just hanging on the seatbelt that's across the lap, you're actually going to sink quite a few inches until that seatbelt gets tight enough to hold you, and by then your head is so there's the top of the aircraft, which is now under you. So it's something to think about if there's a chance to add the crotch strap. When I had my Christian Eagle, it was the first and only, well, it was the first aerobatic airplane I'd ever been inside, and I saw this whole big seatbelt contraption, and I thought, this is crazy. What's this about? And my instructor said, you know, this is an aerobatic airplane. We do inverted things, and sometimes high G inverted things, and you don't want to be moving in the airplane up, down, or left, right. So we strap you in pretty tight. And so that made a ton of sense. So airbag seatbelts are another option, and several aircraft manufacturers now provide them as standard equipment. And there's also a growing aftermarket installation business. So which way do airline seatbelts uncouple? From left to right or right to left? Well, the answer there is no standard. It could be either way. And the question is, why is it important? Well, you may have to exit the aircraft quickly during a high stress event, and you may have to do it in the dark, or upside down or contorted or in some way where you can't concentrate and figure out which hand to use to unbuckle the seatbelt. So here's an exercise that will improve your chances of doing things the right way. So first of all, imagine you're sitting in your usual seat in the airplane and visualize which hand you would use to open the exit closest to you. And our small airplanes, it's either a left and a right, or it's just the right. Or if you're in the back seat, then you got to figure out how that's going to work. How are you going to get out of there? And mainly how you're going to coach your passengers to exit. Just note that it's going to be easier with regard to the seatbelt to unbuckle with either the right hand or the left hand. Typically the one that goes on top of the flap, the seatbelt flap that you're going to lift, you want that opposite hand going over there. So if you have to lift the buckle from the right, it's easier to have your left hand go over there and just grab it with your fingers. If the buckle is on the left, if the flap, kind of goes up from the left, you want to use your right hand. And so nowadays I coach my passengers and students and say, which hand would you use to unbuckle your seatbelt? And then I'll suggest what I just said is use the opposite hand, so you can just go grab it. You don't have to kind of contort your arm to get your thumb under it. And that'll be your quickest way out if you need to exit quickly. So yeah, they're kind of trying to illustrate that here, but basically what I said is what they're trying to show. So, and now if you're inverted, that's an even more interesting question, because again, you may be upside down, you're maybe partially injured, you're disoriented, and now you got to like look down towards your lap, which is looking up. You see what I mean? If you know in advance which hand you're going to use, you just find that seatbelt. And of course, if you're inverted, you may not want to, or at least you want to brace yourself. You either want to hold on to the seat with your other hand so you don't just go clunk towards the head top of the airplane. But so at least this gives you a chance of knowing exactly how to get rid of the seatbelt when you're ready to do so. So one more thing about seatbelts: the seat buckle is in this case is low on the pilot's left side. So with the door closed, the buckle will be under the armrest. Very, very hard to get at. So if the door were jammed, he's gonna lose precious time, and it may require cutting the seatbelt, which you have to wait for someone with equipment and figure out how to do that without slicing your leg. So a better idea would be to lengthen the stub part of it and kind of bring it up towards closer to the center of your lap so that it's easy for you and others to access. See what I mean? It's way down there. It's hard to get at, and it would be hard for a rescuer to get at. So these with small airplanes, we don't use these much, but things like cockpit voice recorder, flight data recorder can help in the aftermath of an accident, and so different versions of that. So enhanced vision is interesting these days with synthetic vision. So we're off of the seatbelt kick now, and we're just talking more about the flying part of it. So here's equipment you can add to the aircraft, or yeah, if you're gonna see literally out front, if there's a deer on the runway at night, since this infrared camera kind of thing can help you see it. It's kind of spendy, so we don't usually do that in our small airplanes. But if you have the money and a fancier airplane, you might consider it, depending on the type of flying you do. So synthetic vision, as we talked about, amazing technology. I have barely gotten into it myself, so I can't comment intelligently on it, but some of you may have flown with it already. either on your iPads or similar devices, or potentially built into your panel, like this Avidyne here. So it's pretty cool. I look forward to getting to know it better. Head-up display. I actually used to work at Flight Dynamics and worked on the part of the design of this technology, and it is pretty fascinating stuff. Again, it's not that available, or at least not that affordable, let's say, for the smaller aircraft. But just know that it's incredible technology. AOA indicators. Military aircraft have had AOA indicators for years, and they're essential to getting optimal performance in challenging situations. Also can be useful in routine flying as well. Only recently have they become more affordable for general aviation aircraft, and they tend to look like this. And again, I've never flown with one in the aircraft. I can understand the usefulness of it, definitely, especially to keep you out of trouble, the base to final turn and things like that, like stay out of the yellow arc. And one of my EAA buddies here, Chapter 105, also works at Van's Aircraft, and as far as I understand it, all of the RV-12s have these as standard equipment. And this fella who's in a management position tells me that Van's Aircraft is so adamant about the benefits of AOA indicators that they're trying hard to figure out how to get these into all aircraft because they're so informative, you know, and they can really help keep you out of trouble. So again, I've never flown with one, but I'd love to do that. In fact, I'm going to bum a ride in an RV-12 here pretty soon, in part to see what that's all about. FAA is moving along the path of certifying AOA indicators. That's good news. Whoops, wrong button. Let's try that. Go away. Go away. Hang on. All right. Electronic ignition. So as with similarly in cars, fewer mechanical parts equals increased reliability. And those of you who know magnetos know there's stuff flying around in there and points, and it's a fairly complex device in a little 15-pound package. So increases maintenance issues and things like that. Electronic ignition gets rid of a lot of that. But on the other hand, you got to keep in mind, well, what happens if the power fails? So is it its own backup, or in some aircraft, I know a lot of people that do replace one magneto with an electronic one, and that gives them better efficiency, better reliability. But in the off chance the electric one is the one that fails, that mechanical one is still there. More than likely, it's the mechanical one that's going to cause a problem, and then the electrical one is going to be help you finish the flight. So anyway, the list goes on and on and on. So there's no end to the cool things you can do with aircraft. So well-trained, proficient pilots are, of course, competent, and safe, and that's why we recommend investing in comprehensive proficiency training. And just like in sports, it works. And medicine, and obviously aviation. So proficiency training obviously increases confidence, comfort, expands your horizons, keeps us safe. And the really good news is that earning any phase of wings constitutes a flight review. Wings will help keep you on top of your game, so you can get a flight review using the Wings program. You'll end up flying 3 full hours with a flight instructor doing different activities. And I know, well, how do you sell this to someone who usually gets it done in 1 hour? And that's a real interesting question. I would look at the safety benefits. You know, FAA loves their flight review, right? And it's very important, and the flying world got safer when that rule came. You used to be able to get certified once and you could fly till you die. And now it's at least every 24 calendar months, you got to have somebody take a look at you. And then as the Wings program developed, they made it possible to get a flight review equivalent by doing Wings things. And they discovered, looking back at the data, once they had a few years of data, is that people who do it the Wings way have fewer accidents and fewer fatal accidents than the people who don't, by a significant percentage. So one way to think of it is, it's just an extra few $100s a year, actually a few $100s every biennium within 24 calendar months, just an extra few $100 instead of the flight review money. You just spread it out. You take 3 Wings webinars like this, and you do 3 hours of flight with a flight instructor. You can space it out every 6 months or whatever you want. And that way you got somebody checking on you, and you have a chance to practice cool things on a more regular basis. So it'll keep you on top of your game. And the cool thing is you can also win money that will more than pay for those flights. So the Wings Industry Advisory Committee, along with Paul and Fran Berger, have developed this sweepstakes where you can win one of various prizes if you do finish a phase of Wings. Not only does that count as your flight review, but you can then go over here to mywingsinitiative.org, enter that information, and then every year they're going to give away $10,000. Like I think there are 2 $500 awards and $750 awards. There are various levels of that total $10,000. And since not a lot of people do this, your chances could be pretty good. So how to win? Select the Wings sweepstakes. Anyway, just go to mywingsinitiative.org. That's the easiest way, than rather try to go through the whole thing here. So you're earning one of your 3 knowledge credits today. You need 3 knowledge credits and 3 flight credits. Each of everything I just said is an hour a piece. And then once you complete all 6, bingo. So I finished mine back in February, and I got my basic phase 1 of Wings. I got a certificate acknowledging that. Part of that certificate said you have just effectively completed a flight review. You don't have to do either the Wings phase or another flight review for 24 calendar months. And then I went over here to My Wings Initiative and entered my information, and I'm going to have to wait for the year to end to see if I win anything. So here it is on the bottom. There are going to be 4 $1,500 winners, 4 $750 winners, and 2 $500 winners. How about that? All right. So this young lady on the left, Catherine, is the FAASTeam Representative of the Year back in 2018. And Karen, young lady on the right, is 2019 National FAASTeam Representative of the Year honoree. And yeah, so more information here at these websites, basically FAASafety.gov, and just dig in. It's a very comprehensive website, and it will help you get there. Speaking of FAASTeam representatives, we all do this for nothing, meaning no money. It sometimes costs us money. Like I had spent several $100s to get this Zoom subscription so that so I can do this. But we don't get paid. I'm not an FAA employee. None of us are, and we do this because we want to make everybody safer, including ourselves. So if you feel like I've earned a cup of coffee, just go to buymeacoffee.com/PhilM, PHILM, and that'd be great. I would really appreciate it. Let me see. There's a question here from someone. Sometimes I get comment on appropriate ways to get dual. With the COVID issue coming on. So that's a very good question. Appropriate ways to get dual time for Wings credit or other training with COVID. So the good question. Thank you for asking. So the webinars are easy. Do what you're doing. Just go find 2 other webinars. If you want, you can join mine next Saturday. Same bat time, same bat channel, and it's going to be on the NASA ASRS, Aviation Safety Reporting System. How to use it, how to dig in and get research, how to file reports, and things like that. I want to demystify it for people because I don't think enough people are using it, in my humble opinion. So the webinars are easy. You're doing it from home, from your computer, and you're safe. In terms of flying, that's going to be up to you and the flight school or whoever owns the aircraft as to the precautions you want to take. When I fly with folks now, we both wear masks, clearly don't shake hands. We're just going to be as careful as possible and just obviously assuming that we've got virus floating around and doing our best not to give it to the other person or get it from the other person. So that's a tough call. There's some people who are just going to wait it out, and I totally respect that. Then it makes it hard to stay current because you won't even fly with an instructor if that's your preference, and that's totally understandable. And of course that means you have time to do more webinars. You don't have to stop just because 3 is the minimum, and keep your mind in the game. And then when the time comes, get enough dual so that you're solid and comfortable. So thank you for that question. All right, so let me just crank this out. Fly regularly with an instructor. Practice carefully. Practice emergency procedures as well, please. In fact, have your instructor review them with you. Those of you who attended my power loss at 300 feet webinar on Thursday, you heard me talk about that. Anything you do that could qualify for wings credit, go ahead and document that so that you can build up your statistics there. And that's the slideshow. Ballistic parachutes, excellent question, and I'd love to know what your experience with them is, if anybody has any. Everything I've read about them, I love. I mean, I just keep seeing, from time to time, reports of people who had trouble and couldn't get the engine going, or who knows what the problem was, and they pop the chute and they walk away. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know all the statistics and if they're different brands or whatever, but every report I've never heard of anyone being hurt because of the parachute. But that's just my limited experience of seeing and reading things. So maybe I'm missing stuff, but as far as I can tell, they're pretty cool. See, it's so interesting with flying. Most of the time, if something goes wrong, we have opportunity to figure it out, work it out, figure out where we're going to land, and come out unscathed. Most of the time, I'll just wild guess 99% of the time. I'm just throwing that out there. It's that 1% that's the real trouble. And typically that's right after takeoff. You are extra vulnerable right then, depending on what you're taking off towards: trees, houses, buildings. If you're really lucky, it's just farm fields that are all plowed in the right direction, so you can just go straight ahead. That's probably only happens if you're taking off from a farm field. So that whole takeoff situation, until you're high enough that you have options and time to think about it, which 300 feet is not. And at some point during landing, usually there's a few seconds there at least where you just need power to just get that last oomph to the runway, especially when you're all flapped down and geared down. So there's little bitty windows there like that are really problematic. And so you got to be on your game and just say, what if, and know what you're going to do before it happens. So I've done a bunch of training out of Aurora recently. If you folks in my area know Aurora State Airport in Oregon, probably the safest place because there's no obstacles, at least right there at the airport. It's flat terrain. There's no mountains. I don't even think there are any buildings on the either. If you're approaching runway 35, you're approaching from the south, a ways back there's buildings, but for the most part, it's clear. But you take off runway 35, and if you have to set it, you hit a bird, right? It doesn't have to be the engine that screws up. There are plenty of things that can happen. And you go, dang it, and you want to land straight ahead. Well, if you can get it down and stop before the road, I can't think of the name of the road right now. Great. If not, there's a power line. Okay, so I'm taking off with my student, and I say, nowadays I do a pre-takeoff briefing just about every single time because I want them thinking about it. So if we're not off the ground, by which intersection are we just going to abort on the runway, for example? And then when we're right off for the ground, if we have trouble, what are we going to do? Land straight ahead. All right, well, what if we're 100 feet up and there is no more straight ahead? Well, in other words, there's no more runway straight ahead or insufficient runway. Well, I'm still going to go straight ahead. And then I say, what are you going to do about that power line? And they go, go under it? No. So there's at least 5 seconds, you know, in a slowish airplane, a Cessna 150, where I tell them, you see that stand of trees to the left? It's just a little bit off to the left when you're taking off runway 35. That's it. Head for those trees, mush into the treetops. They will slow you down. Sacrifice the airplane. The airplane is completely irrelevant. It's completely expendable. It's just a brick for the purposes of survival. That's it. It's there to protect you, period. The airplane is expendable. You are not. So just turn towards the treetops because there's nothing else. For those few seconds, that is the answer. 5 seconds later, especially the beautiful glider 150 is, you actually can make a 90-degree turn to the right. There's some fairly low flat roof buildings. And I think you can get past those and then past that power line to a beautiful field over on the right side. A little bit further, there's one on the left. But see what I mean? Every second of the way, if you know in advance what you're going to do, you won't be stuck like I was going, oh my God, I'm at 300 feet. Engine's dying. I've lost all my oil. Oh, okay, I found a throttle setting that works. Now what do I do? And I just instinctively turned right, even though very likely the left would have been a better choice because then I could have just been over the river. Not that I relish a water landing, I don't. But I like it a whole lot better than a building landing, which is also known as death. So again, since you were in the class, you know that the engine hung in there for me, thank goodness. And I figured out the accelerated stall and took care of that in time. But that's kind of the problem with engine failures. My primary instructor taught me this very, very well. He said, and I'm paraphrasing now, he didn't say it in these words, but I like to say, if an engine is failing, that's a verb. It's failing. So however bad it just got compared to what it's supposed to be doing, chances of it staying exactly like this and not getting worse are slim. It's probably going to get worse. So however much power you just lost, you're going to lose more. And that was echoing through my mind that whole time I was doing that 180 to the right. It was like, this thing's just going to die, and so am I, and so is he. So I'm just amazed at that Continental engine that hung in there with zero oil until we got all the way back to the ramp. But yeah, so yeah, there's those very short moments of time where you need to know well in advance what you're going to do if there's any trouble whatsoever, because you don't have time to think. Once you're 3,000 feet, you can obviously just relax, enjoy the view, have a good time, watch for traffic, make sure you're on the right heading, you know, don't violate airspace, don't hit anybody. And now if you got trouble, you've got places to go and time to deal with it. So the impossible turn with total power loss, you know, there's so much data on that now online and some very cool videos. I don't know if you saw the Brian Schiff did one called I think he called it the impossible turn a few months ago, which is excellent. So what are my thoughts? I am afraid to share because I haven't researched it enough. So my thoughts are I need to research it as well. And I need to practice it alone and with my students and find out at what point can we turn back and how steep a bank, which direction, you know, left or right turns. Yeah, so it means you got to practice it at altitude. Pretend the runway is at 3,000 feet, go up to 3,500 feet, turn around and see if you get back to the runway, which is that tree under you, you know, when you started the maneuver, when you pretended you had just taken off. See what I mean? Just practice it at altitude and see what you can do. And probably only with an instructor and with great care, practice it possibly at an airport. Yeah, so it's just going to take some reading, some research, and of course practice to be able to answer that. That's the best I can do. Tell me the definition of night. This is a trick question. So get it wrong. It's okay. I did until I saw it on a discussion on either the Flights Above Facebook page or maybe a CFI discussion group or something like that. What's the definition of night? When can you log night flight? So you need to unmute and tell me. So COVID.
I know to log night takeoffs and landings, it has to be at least an hour after sunset. It has to be completely black. That's for carrying passengers.
For carrying passengers, right? So that's almost precisely correct. So you actually can log night flight and night takeoffs and landings as soon as the sun sets. Literally sunset to sunrise is night flight and night takeoffs and landings. But to carry passengers, those takeoffs and landings have to be at least an hour after sunset and no later than an hour before sunrise. So it gets very confusing. You kind of need a logbook that says night and then the hour before night, and then night landings, and then the hour before, you know, it's just a mess. So personally, I don't log night unless it's at least an hour, because I'm just going to lose track of which ones were hour after, hour before, and things like that. So it's a confusing regulation. Night flight and night takeoffs and landings are sunset to sunrise, but to carry passengers an hour after sunset, you need to have done your 3 takeoffs and landings to a full stop. At least 3 of them within the last 90 days, at least an hour after sunset. So it's annoyingly confusing, but if you just stick with the hour after until an hour before and just make that your personal, there's nothing that says you have to log nighttime just because you flew at night. Just log it as time. And then it's just easier to keep track of that part of the regulation about carrying passengers if you just personally what I do. I just don't log it as night unless it's literally an hour after, up to an hour before. And it's never an hour before because who gets up that early?
Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Paul, your mic and camera are up. I get you. Someone asked about COVID and extensions. You know what I know. I'm trying to find the latest email I got from FAA about extensions, and I can't find it right now. But you're right, they extended again, which is very cool. Or did they extended it, or they announced that they're going to?
I think
So
they just announced.
you know what I know. Go ahead.
They just announced they were going to look at it again. Originally, anyone whose medical expired from I think March through June got
Right.
to June 30th, and then last week they announced they were looking at it again. But
Right.
I've not seen anything final yet.
Right. Gotcha. I think it's about the same thing. Keep in mind, please, that the fact that the FAA quote will take no action unquote if you go beyond the the end of your medical based on that extension, that's separate from what your insurance company may require. They may not agree with that extension, so to speak. So in other words, even though FAA won't take any certificate action, which is their way of saying we're going to extend your allowable time to fly. So they're not literally extending the expiration date, whatever that 12 calendar months, 24 calendar months, whatever that is. They're not extending it. They're just saying we're not going to bust you for it. So for insurance purposes, once your medical expires, you may be uninsured. In fact, I think that's likely the case. So please be careful about that. And by the way, if you haven't looked into Basic Med yet, goodness gracious, please do. Guess what? My medical just expired. I don't care. I prepared for Basic Med long ago. I get 4 years on that. I think I still have 2 years left on it. No, 3 years left on it because I just had an exam in the last year. I don't care if my medical expires. So look into Basic Med. You get 4 years between exams. All right. Hard to be night current, especially now. My goodness, sunset is like 9:30. So all that carrying passenger stuff starts at 10:30. There's 1 year I was getting a student, finishing up his night training and takeoffs and landings on the longest day. I don't know if it's the longest day of the year or the latest, because they don't quite line up. But it was literally the latest sunset. It was like 10:30 sunset or something insane like that. So we took off at 11:30. I don't think we landed after all of those takeoffs and landings until 2 a.m. You do what you got to do. Also, are there significant limitations on who it applies to? And that's true. It's not a blanket extension that the FAA is offering. It's only for certain flight activities. So you got to read that stuff very, very carefully. That's a good point, Paul. Okay, and 1 hour after sunset is about 10:45 there in Michigan. Gotcha. Yeah, probably about the same here because we're at the same latitude. Is that right? Latitude. Okay. All right, 1 or 2 more. We can end a few minutes early. Today is summer solstice. Happy summer, everybody. Happy Father's Day if you're a father tomorrow. Yeah. Okay, well, thanks for attending, and give me, as I said, a good week or two for the wings credit. And yeah, stay safe, stay away from viruses.
A second. Last week I was doing some practice touch and goes and option approaches at a class Charlie, and the transponder failed. The tower controller told me to reset the transponder. Anyway, it failed. I couldn't reset it. And I had to come back through, not just through the class Charlie, but through a couple of class Delta airports, one of which didn't want to give me transition until they checked whether they could. Anyway, I got back to my home field uneventfully. Do you think I need to file a NASA form for that?
Huh, interesting question. You need to. It's always voluntary, of course.
Yeah, there's no downside in doing it, so I probably will. But
yeah, it's a good question. It's good practice. I don't know. Have you ever filed one before?
Oh yeah.
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 If it was me, I would do it just to cover my butt. You don't know what's going to happen. So it's probably not necessary because obviously they let you in initially and you were working and then it failed. So they know things fail.
Right. Right.
Yeah. You know, it takes 10 minutes. So
There's no downside. True.
yeah. Anyway, that's an interesting question though. Yeah. I would do it just for kicks. Just get it in the system, you know. It's a good question. So, okay. Well, again, if you want, buymeacoffee.com/PhilM, PHILM. No obligation. These are free for you, so don't feel obligated. And yeah. So anyway, I appreciate it. Hope to see you next week. And email me, phmand@gmail if you want any more questions or comments, suggestions. So yeah, thanks for being here, you folks, and we'll see you again.